Akiza, and today we're going to go over my Goober 2026 books and stats. I'm sorry about the angle. For some reason I just could not get it to be straight and keep me in view at the same time, so a little bit crooked unfortunately, but hopefully this still works out. So first off, the Goober Readathon is run by Jess from Korean and a couple of her friends as well, Rachel and Monica, and they've come up with a few, like a overall theme as well as prompts for the month that was run during May 2026, and I'll leave the link down below. So it ran from May the 1st up until May the 30th, and it had quite a wide range of prompts that could be used, not all of them reading wise, but I've actually stuck to just the reading ones this year to see where I could get up to in terms of prompts. Last time I did a readathon was probably back in school, to be honest. I used to do the MS readathon every year, but then it kind of got boring because no one would pay me by the book. They'd just give me a general sum, and however much I read was what I read, but there wasn't really any incentive to it. But the MS Readathon is MS for multiple sclerosis, and it was a way for students to participate in raising money for the awareness and research of multiple sclerosis. So that was the reason for the Readathon, and that was why we had monetary goals associated with the books we were reading. So you could either get people to sponsor you a certain amount per book, or you could get them to sponsor you sort of one general sum. And then you read as many books as you could in whatever the period of time was at that point, and then you collected the money at the end for that. So that's kind of how that worked, and that's probably most of the readathons I've done throughout my life so far, but definitely happy to find excuses to read things. So that's what this was mainly, but also let me get through quite a bit of the TBR, which has never really been in control, to be honest. So I think stats wise, I only purchased 2 of the books, and I'll show you which 2 in a little bit. My total points were 41. I was actually aiming for 46, so I was 4 books short of hitting the highest tier. So that gets me the second highest tier, which is a Spirited Sous Chef. And this was a cooking themed readathon this time, so all of the prompts are towards that. So I've got myself the printout over here. This is the planned one, and then this is what I actually did for the month. They actually put an amazing amount of work into setting it up. So the information they had available, they had the Google spreadsheets, and everything was auto done. So all you had to do was put in your book, the author, the date you read it, and it calculated everything for you, which was really, really cool. So I'll start off with part A. There were 2 sections, part A and part B. And the way it worked was, I'll just sort of give you a general overview, but part A, you had a few different sections, and each section had 3 tiers, so part 1, part 2, part 3, and you had to do part 1 to be able to then do part 2 and then do part 3, and each subsequent one was worth more points. Whereas part B, they weren't really connected with each other at all, so you could do them in any order. So I'll start off with the order I read things in. That was not the Kindle. So this was my first book. It was Queen's Quality. Technically it's a manga, but they were pretty flexible in terms of what constituted a book in the setting. So Queen's Quality, volume 1. This was A Book You Think You Like. And this one I'd purchased in late April, so it actually arrived just before the readathon. And the reason I picked it up was because I saw it promoted at the back of one of the other manga series that I was reading. And I was like, ooh, chess piece, let's see how that goes. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I've played chess for a long time. It was actually the first board game I ever learned how to play. And I don't know whether my dad's exaggerating or telling the truth here, but if you believe him, he said that he taught me how to play before I actually knew how to walk. But that's his story there. But yeah, Queen's Quality, volume 1. It was a pretty quick read because it is a manga. I haven't purchased the rest of it yet, but I will. I'm just waiting to move into my new place first, but I definitely enjoyed it. Also found out it had a prequel, so I'll probably read that first. Next books I read were, I think it was these ones. So these were rereads. This is one of my favourite authors, Emily Rodda, the Datora Quest 2. So I've got book 1, which is the Cavern of the Fear. Book 2, the Isle of Illusion. And book 3, which is the Shadowlands. And that's the trilogy, which is the second Datora Quest series. The first one is 8 books long, and the third one is 4 books long. Didn't read the first one because my copy's in Melbourne with my parents. And the third one, I've got it in an omnibus, so I wasn't sure whether that counted as 1 book or 4 books, and decided just not to worry about it. So this was for a different section to the first one. So cooking techniques, and the first one was 300 or less pages. So this one has 138, so definitely less than 300. The second one was finish a book within 24 hours, and the third one was a 4+ star average rating. And it just so happened that they were in order as well. So if prompt number 1 worked for book 1, prompt number 2 worked for book 2. Or realistically, those two could have been anywhere. But the only one that had an average plus 4-star rating was book 3. So that worked out. And as I said, one of my favourite authors, one of my favourite series, and I've read that for a long, long time. Next up, I think I did both of my Kindle books. Sorry, I should probably show you my Kindle first. This is my Kindle Scribe. This is just a clear cover, and I've got a scrapbooking paper underneath it, and then I've stuck a pop socket on here. So in theory you can change the tops, but I've just got a Pokemon one, so a little Bulbasaur in a Satchel Garden. But I just hold it like that and read as I need to. Oh, whoops, I've got another book open on here. So there you go, that's... I might have to put screenshots of these two in there, but there you go, that's my latest reads. So the next one I read was Double Exposure by Brian Caswell. That's another reread I've had since high school, but I didn't own the physical book, so I used to borrow it from the library quite a lot, and in university as well. And then I finally decided to get the ebook, so I've got a copy of it for myself. I couldn't find the right cover when I was looking on Amazon, so I've just got the ebook for now. It's not my usual genre of books. They're definitely not a fantasy, and I can't tell you why it's so interesting, because that will definitely be a spoiler, but it was a very interesting read, and it definitely reads different the second time after you know the big twist at the end. Brian Caswell is also one of my non-fantasy favourite authors, so I've read some of his other books as well, but Double Exposure is still definitely my favourite. And then after that, the other ebook I read was the one right next to it, so Not Made to Last by Jay McLean. I think I saw that one on another FlossTubers channel. I can't remember exactly who it was, but that one came recommended, so that's why I read that. I did enjoy it, but I don't know whether I'd follow up with the rest of the series, because I think what I enjoyed most were the characters. And the series are written in a way where it focuses on a different character and different stories every time. So I've been trying it, but probably not a series I'm going to definitely religiously follow. Next up, we've got another reread. So this one is The Outsiders. This is my original high school copy. It was actually one of the books that was prescribed to us in can't remember whether it was year 8 or year 10. I think year 10. And it was one of our reading books then. I had a tendency back then to read... Oh, I just realised I didn't tell you what prompts those two Kindle books were. So Double Exposure was after the Kitchen Basics one, and that one was planned to read this year. And because I wanted to get a copy of that book and reread it, that was part of the plan. And then Not Made to Last was a book you already own, so I had purchased that after seeing it on a booktube, and I hadn't read it yet, so that one worked out for that. Now back to The Outsiders. This one was... where is it? Yeah, I probably should have printed this a little bit bigger. So this was actually a category B prompt, and this was reread a book. So as I said, this was a book that was initially a year 10, I think year 10 prescribed reading. Actually, the first time I read it, I had a tendency to read books before we read them out loud in class. One, because I hated not knowing what was going to happen at the end of the story, and also I wanted forewarning in case it was going to be an awkward scene to read in class. And the first time I read it, I started crying on one particular scene. You probably can guess which one if you've read the book. And guess which scene I had to read out loud when it was my turn. Well, I am thankful I didn't cry the second time, but that worked out to be a very good motivator to continue reading ahead, in English class at least. So that was The Outsiders. This is my original copy of the book, which I brought secondhand from one of the older students anyway, and that's lasted me all these years and will continue to stay on my bookshelf. And then next up was I think that's it for the rereads actually. So all the rest of these are new books. This one is A Sea Change by Cassandra Clare, and the prompt for this one was a newly acquired book. This one actually arrived around the end of April, beginning of May time from Amazon as a pre-read, so that turned out to be perfect timing. I've read the City series by Cassandra Clare. I've read some of the other ones as well, but I've still got a few on my shelf of the trilogies that I haven't read. But this was a cute little novella, so quite small. But it was one I could easily read in one sitting, so that was nice. And very pretty cover as well. I'm loving the ocean vibes. And then we've got more books from the side B section. So this is the first of the books that I brought new for this challenge. There were 3 books in there that were picking a book from a host TBR, and they gave 5 options each. And this one, so Stage Set for Villains, this was from Rachel's TBR. So I read this one first. I think I actually read this on the day that we had the Stitchy meetup in Richmond. So I took this to read on the train and on the way back. Didn't get all the way through, so I just finished it off when I got home. Part of why I was interested in this was the cover really reminded me of Persona 5. So the main character in that series, the colour scheme is essentially red and black. And the personas in the main characters, don't really know how to describe it, but kind of like their partner in a way. It was Arsène Lupin from the Gentleman Thief, essentially. So it really worked out in terms of just thematically having a character that's used to being on stage and really amps up the dramatic flair, and then having a book with this title was really interesting. But I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did with the concept of it. So now I want to look at the rest of this author's books and see if there's anything else that catches my eye, because I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. And then straight after that I read another TBR. This was one of Monica's, and this is Agnes Orbit's Mysterious Cat Shelter. Very, very pretty cover there. This one was an okay read. I did enjoy it as kind of like a little bit like how you read a rom-com if you're not really a romance person. So that's kind of how I felt about this one. There was magic and fantastical elements to it, and the concept itself was interesting. So I did enjoy it, but I think the first book really set the standard high for me. But this was the other book that I brought brand new. And then we're getting back into my TBRs again. This one was a book with an eye-catching cover, and this is The Wren in the Holy Library. Aside from having a gorgeous cover, it also has painted edges, and then internal cover as well. There you go, and that's the cover without the jacket. So I think this was actually my first purchase from the Australian Book Fair, not last year, but the year before. I went with a work friend who'd won some tickets off Twitter, I think, Twitter or Tumblr, but she had 2 tickets, so she invited me to come along with her. And we didn't know quite what to expect because all we knew was it was a book fair, essentially. We weren't sure whether it was going to be more like a kiddie theme or more of adult books, but then we saw it. And we saw all of the special editions that had the new releases, the authors that some of us were actually quite familiar with, and we're like, oh wow, this is way better than we thought. So I've signed myself up to go this year as well, but this was my first purchase because the same friend also used to collect special edition books, and I'd never seen any with painted edges before. So I've seen with different colours, like pink and gold and that sort of thing, but not this kind of edging before. So this was my first purchase. I think I picked it partially because it's got library in the title, and partially the concept of having creatures in a library. It wasn't quite that, but it was still really interesting, and I actually really liked the way their story ended, though I can see why it would bug a lot of people as well. But that was that book, and I was very happy to have a reason to read some of my special editions. Next up in the same section, this one is a special edition book, and this is another hardcover with painted edges, but this one is The Naturals. So Jennifer Lynn Barnes, the same author of the Inheritance games. I'm not that interested in the story of the Inheritance games per se, but I am enjoying the storyline of this one, so I will continue to read it. But another one I'm waiting till I move into the new place before I'm buying the rest of the books. And in particular because my local bookstore doesn't have the hardcover painted editions, and I do want them all to match. And I don't actually remember where I got this from initially, but I had this one. Again, lovely jacket, inside cover, and it's the puzzle piece up the top as well. So that was another book that I had with a special edition that I decided now was the time to start reading. Still got more hardcovers to go. Next up is... Okay, I think I read these 3 kind of one after another in the same section. So this was the International Cuisine, and the first prompt was an author from in your country, and Emily Roda is the same person who wrote the Del Toro Quest books I showed at the beginning. She's actually from Australia, and this is a book of hers that I hadn't read yet. So this is called The Glim, or The Glimmer, not sure how you pronounce that, but this was a standalone book that she did in collaboration with the artist that works with her quite often. So the same artist that did the Del Toro Book of Monsters books and the covers for the Del Toro Quest series did all of the illustrations in here, and there is a lot of beautiful illustrations. That being said, it's also a lot of reading, surprisingly. So it's both a picture book and a decent sized novel. So that's the front cover there. Just pick out a scene. This is one of my favorites. So all the dragons there. Ooh, there we go. But yeah, the book is filled with lots and lots of beautiful illustrations like that. So that was a good reason. I think this is the only book actually of hers that I hadn't read yet. So that was a good reason to do that one. And that's probably the heaviest book in the pile as well. It doesn't look good, but it's pretty heavy. There you go. And then the next one was a author from or in another country. And I went for a slightly easier read then, and I actually read this on the same day as the other one. But this is there you go, Big Panda and Tiny Dragon by James Norbury. So he's a UK author. And the reason I picked up this book was there's a quote from this book that lives in one of the hospitals I'd worked at in their tea room. Can't remember exactly what the quote is at the moment, but there's lots of little sentiments in this book, and it is essentially another picture book. So for example, it's got lots of drawings, a little bit of text, but each of the pages has quite a memorable sentiment. So that's why this was a good read. It's not really a classical picture storybook per se. It's more of a book with a lot of sentiments that you can carry forward with any age, or you can just take one of them or all of them as you wish. But I did want to, since I'd come across that quote, wanted to read the whole book in its source. So now I've done that. And then the third book was to read a translated book, and I think this is one of the few that I had that was definitely from another language originally, aside from the mangas, I guess. I could have just used the manga, that would have been so much faster. Anyway, this is First Person Singular by Murakami. He's quite a popular author, but I haven't read any of his books before. I think they'd take a little bit more time than what I can give them from a work day. But this one is a collection of short stories, and I think I bought this paper chain. Yep, I bought this from a small bookstore in Canberra. So the store is called Paper Chain in Manuka, and this is one of the books I picked up while I was there. So again, good reason to read it finally. It was definitely an interesting read. He doesn't write your classic stories in that they've got a satisfying conclusion every time. They're more sort of pockets in time with surreal aspects, and the person who's narrating them is then looking back and wondering or interpreting what's happened. So you don't always get a satisfying conclusion per se, but that's kind of like real life in a way. So yeah, interesting read, interesting perspective as well. And probably can't see it very well on the camera, but it does have a bit of a gold sheen on the cover as well. So that was those three. And now we're down to the final two books. This is the last of the Host TBR books. This one was from Jess's bookshelf, and this was actually the only one I already owned. So that was a very easy decision to make. And this is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. Even though I owned it and I'd been planning to read it for a while, this is actually one of the later books I read, in part because I knew I was probably going to enjoy it since I'd read books by this author before, and I knew the end of the month was going to get a bit chaotic. So that's why I left this towards the end, and it definitely served, so that was good. And I don't think I definitely did not see the end coming, so again, nice fun read. I thought I was going to enjoy it, and I did, so that was good. I actually got that in a box set, so there's other books from there that I still need to read. And then this was the last book I wound up reading. I didn't intend for it to be the last book, but I was reading this on Saturday, and I was also on call for there's 2 on-calls that we do at the moment. So I do on-calls. I'm currently working in the inpatient mental health unit in a pediatric hospital, which means I do on-calls for the pediatric hospital, as in if somebody's sick to fill in for them for the shift. But I also do on-calls as the psychiatry registrar. So people who present to ED, or if there's questions from the ward, they come to me when I'm on call as well. So this was the latter one. I was on call for the psychiatry team on Saturday, and it was a very chaotic day. I think up until now I've managed to get away with up to about 4 or 5 hours on a weekend maximum. This time I was there for 4 hours the first time, and then about 8 or 9 hours the second time. So by the time I got back, it was after 3 in the morning. So I was definitely not getting another book done after that. But I did manage to finish this one before and after the first trip to the hospital. And this is Impulse by Ellen Hopkins. This is another one I picked up from I think it was it might have been just in Marie Does Stuff. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I saw this on a channel for someone who knits and cross stitches as well. And the only people that are coming to mind at the moment are Jessie Marie Does Stuff or Elizabeth Ann Can Stitch. This was also before I met Adelaide. So I've had this book for a long time, but the size was a bit intimidating. And I also wasn't able to get a hold of the other book by this author. So I can't remember whether it was a sequel or just another book in the same style, but I wasn't able to get my hands on it. And part of me didn't want to read this book in case I really wanted to read the other book and then couldn't get my hands on it. So that's that. It was a really interesting read, also quite thematically appropriate given where I'm rotating at the moment for work. I won't go into it too much, but it is essentially set in a psychiatric institution. I don't think it's the same as our one currently because we're within a hospital, and this is more of the setting itself is a psychiatric unit, but not within a wider hospital. So they're the type of people that are there, and their goals are different to what they would be for someone who comes into the hospital or into the emergency department. So be aware from that point of view, though, that there are lots of triggering details in here. So not only what the reason for them requiring institutionalization is, but also a lot of the pasts that have led them to there. And there is a lot of different types of trauma in this, so just be aware if you're getting into it. And it doesn't exactly end on a happy note either. The reason I used this book was, so this is a mixed genre book. This was the only one I could think of off the top of my head that was mixed genre. And I'm not entirely sure how you describe the two genres, but in a way it is young adult from the themes it's using, but the way it's written, it's not written in normal prose. So it is written in more of a poetic form and using the points of view of the different characters in there. So it looks at I think it was only 3 main characters. And it's almost like poetry in a way, the way it's written. It does take you a little while to get used to whose voice is whose and to pass out all of the information it's giving you along with all of the emotions underlying it. And again, another one that's going to read quite differently when you go back and read it with all the additional context in there. But this is the only one I could think of off the top of my head that would fit that genre, so that's why I've done that. I actually forgot to get the 2 books I meant to read for that, so I'll just go and grab those. Okay, I'm back. So these are the 3 books I had intended to still read, which I didn't get around to. But this was the book I meant to read for a genre I don't usually read. This is Stephen King's The Long Walk. It is technically a horror, which I don't read a whole lot of because watch a whole lot of because I'm quite picky about the quality of my horror. I don't know whether it's working in a medical field or just me in general, but I find a lot of horror has gore just for the sake of gore, which is hard to find interesting when you kind of see that. Not day to day necessarily. I don't do surgery or obstetrics or any of those terms where you would see a lot of blood necessarily. But yeah, it's kind of, I need a reason for there to be lots of gore for it to be satisfying and not just a plot point or a plot tool rather to amp up the horror. This one's a little bit different. It's more of a psychological horror or a dystopian in a way horror, I feel, even though it's not technically a dystopia. Oh no, it is actually. Oh. I just read the blurb and it says it's set in dystopian America, so there you go. I have read this before, back in high school. Do plan to read it again. Did buy a physical copy of it and then have not got around to reading it recently, so that was my plan for that prompt. And then, sorry, vehicles are being loud outside. This was my plan for the science prompt. This is Artemis by Andy Weir, same author that wrote The Martian and Project Hail Mary, which I did finally watch the movie now that it's no longer exclusive to cinemas. So yeah, I had actually been saving this book specifically for that because I didn't want to read all my Andy Weir books quickly and then not have any more. So that was the plan. Did not get around to reading The Long Walk, hence did not get around to reading this either. But we'll still be reading both of those things, hopefully in the near future. And then this was my 3rd and final book that I was planning to read. This one is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, and this is from the Chaos Walker series. This was the poll picked book, so you picked out 3 books or in my case what I did was picked out the first book in 3 different series that I hadn't packed away yet, and asked the poll members on Discord to pick, or to vote rather, for which one I should read. Left it to the very last book, so that's why I didn't quite get all the way there, but this was leading the votes by about 10 on top of the other 2 options, so I thought this would be the next series I pick up. Now, the book that I'm currently reading is none of those. You probably saw on my Kindle earlier, but I'd gone to see if I could get just the photo covers to show you guys, and accidentally opened up a new book and then read a few pages before I realised, oh wait, I was doing something else. So I have started a different book, which is not any of the books I had planned to read, but we can talk about that in the next crafty update. So as I said in the end, 3 books I didn't read. And how many books did I have in total? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I read 17 books in the end. In total, I did mean to read 20, which is the more nice and round number, but I guess 17 probably works better for me as a person anyway. I'm not, as you can probably tell, I'm a bit all over the place in general, but that's the way I like to roll as well. So in total I got 41 points. I was aiming for 46, which is, I think, not bad considering the way our month ended. June is not shaping up to be any less chaotic at the moment, either on the work front or the home front. But I'm still working on crafting, reading, enjoying what I can, still squeezing in the study. And speaking of study, I was not using one of my medical textbooks as the science prompt, even though I probably could have gotten away with that. But yeah, this was supposed to be a fun reading challenge, so medical textbooks were not allowed. And that's it for this video. Probably the next video will be in the new place, so I guess we'll see what that looks like. Thank you all for liking, commenting and subscribing. I know I'm behind on my comments, but I will be getting to them in the next few days hopefully. And I've got some new videos to watch as well, so hopefully I'll be catching up in the next little while. I probably won't have a video out until July. Yeah, I guess we'll see how we go. Anyway, thanks for watching everyone. Bye!